Get Gutsy episode number 179 with Andrea Owen. How to stop feeling like shit in 2018. Let's dive in. Welcome to Get Gutsy. I'm your host, Jenny Fennig, and I am so excited to be on this journey with you. A cutting-edge show blending business and spirituality, Get Gutsy serves up a potent blend of stories, lessons, and tips to help you make a massive impact in the world through your soul's work and your inspired life. No more going it alone, no more excuses. The world needs more brave women saying yes to leadership. Are you with me? Good. Let's get gutsy now. Hey, it's Jenny. Oh my gosh. This is our first episode of the new year. First episode of 2018. Welcome to 2018. Welcome to 2018. I am so excited. I have to admit, I am recording this intro in 2017, 2017, because I will be chilling the first week of 2018, actually, in Florida, basking in some sunshine. And I wanted to create this intro before I go. I've been in the midst of just this wonderful holiday, end of year energy. And you may hear holiday tunes in the background. My daughter is coloring in a new kind of coloring book she got for Christmas. My sons are outside playing football in the snow with my husband. My daughter just walked in here, and we're just going with it. We're just going with it. You got to go over there. She's coming in. She's coming in. She's coming in. And my Jamie Ami team was like, hey, I thought you were going to do that intro, a few days ago. I'm like, yeah, I did too. But then just didn't happen. Christmas took priority. I am a mom of 3, and it was so amazing. My one of my sons, he goes, Mom, this was the best Christmas ever. And Kate at one point said to me love all my presents, Mama. Me love all my presents, Mama. And however you celebrated, you may not even celebrate Christmas. We celebrate Hanukkah and Christmas in my family. Whatever you've been doing the last few weeks of 2017, I hope they were magical. If you experienced some hard stuff, because that's part of the deal too, I hope you were gentle with yourself. I hope that you were able to really wrap up the year, and this episode is helping you to make space for the amazingness that will be 2018. I am proclaiming it and calling it in and all of those things. So I want you to be with me on that and just freaking get pumped, because the entire year is stretched out in front, and this is the time that you really make some commitments to yourself, make some decisions, and know that everything that you want to see, you get to call that in. You get to create that. And that's really how I spent the last few weeks of 2017, was just carving out space, getting really quiet. Went on a social media detox. When this goes live, I'll still be on that social media detox. Best thing ever. Oh my goodness. Listen, I love social media. You know that. And I need a breather from time to time. I think we all do. And some really powerful things happen when you give yourself that gift, where it's like I was redefining what I do with my time. I wasn't going to my phone and checking in on stuff. I was simply chilling. I was reading. I was working on some projects at home. I was just being with my family. I was doing other things besides checking in on social media. So contemplate how you might want to bring out regular social media sabbaticals throughout this coming year. And you'll be hearing me talking about more of this stuff. I really been thinking about what else I want to share with you in this new year. I've got some fresh teachings, cooking, some fresh kind of ways to work together cooking. So keep your eyes and ears and heart and soul open. Sound good? All right, so let me tell you about what we got for you today. It's my girl, Andrea Owen, who is a return guest. She has been on this podcast before. And she got a brand new book out. She does. It actually launches this day that this episode goes live. Her new book is called How to Stop Feeling Like Shit. And this episode is called How to Stop Feeling Like Shit in 2018. I added in 2018, just to make it really timely. So here's the deal. Are you an overachiever? Are you a people pleaser? Are you a perfectionist, or are you recovering in any of those areas? I get it. OMG, do I get it? I have been there. I have done that. And if you are ready to break free, then you got to listen to this episode and share this episode with at least one friend, because I know you have friends who are those things: overachievers, people pleasers, perfectionists, and it's eating them up. So my friend Andrea Owen is on a mission to help women stop self-sabotaging and feel proud of who they are. Andrea has identified an array of habits and behaviors that hold women back. And in her new book, she details how to overcome these patterns so you can live a kick-ass life. We have such a great conversation, and we get really, real with each other, and I think, have a nice rapport and flow, because Andrea and I, we know each other. We've been, in 2017 especially, got to know each other much deeper, supporting each other, every month, and really tuning into where each of us is going in our work. So you might sense that energy when you tune in today. You'll hear these nuggets. We're going to talk about shame as the driving force behind these habits of overachievement, people-pleasing, perfectionism. How personal values are the anchor helping women use their voice in our current climate. Andrew talks about why the message of, quote, stay strong, end quote, can be unhealthy, how to redefine it, and I talk about my personal connection to that message. I tell a story from my past. And we do talk about the benefits of living a sober life, and you'll hear Andrea and I's take on that. And, lots more, because that is how we roll. And I'm super pumped to just be with you on this journey again. If you've been here for a long time in the Get Gutsy realm, thanks so much. If you're just getting here, cool. I'm glad you found us. We've got an extraordinary lineup of guests for, a while. I batch my interviews, and I've got, an extraordinary lineup, like pretty much through March. I'm just like solid, and then I'm kind of feeling into who else I want to come and talk to you this year. So just be with us every single week. I am hooking you up. I'm ready to give you these conversations, these mostly women on a mission. We've had some guys in the past, but 99.9% of our guests are women, because I know 99.9% of our listeners are women. All you cool guys out there, what's up? But I want you to really tune in and simply open up to one message, like one takeaway that was really, really powerful for you from this episode in particular. And get out there and play with it. And, connect with me on social media. When you see me share about these episodes, comment back, tell me what you get. Just engage, engage with me, engage with others, and trust that your sacred work is meant to extend in 2018 and beyond. And the first step for you is to stop feeling like shit. So without further ado, enjoy this episode with Andrea Owen and Jenny Fenig as we talk about how to stop feeling like shit in 2018. Enjoy. Andrea Owen, so pumped to have you here on Get Gutsy.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here again.
I know, you're back. I don't always have people back, and it's always fun when they do come back. I'm like, ooh, there's like more stuff to talk about. There's more work.
More stuff.
And it's usually my women who are writers, who have books, like another book is coming out. And so I want to celebrate you, because today, when this episode airs, It is your launch day for your brand new book, baby. How to Stop Feeling Like Shit.
Yes. I should have it. It's over there, but
Yeah,
yes.
there it is. We can imagine how beautiful it is. This is airing. This is our first official episode of 2018. So much to celebrate, so much to talk about. Let's just dive in.
Okay.
Why did you write this book? Why do you care about helping people stop feeling like shit?
Well, it's funny, if I'm going to go way back, I wrote my first book in 2012 or I think it came out at the end of 2013. And I swore after that, it's kind of like when you have a kid and childbirth hurts and you're like, I'm never doing this again. And partly because I felt like I put all of my wisdom into that first book, I thought like, there's no way, I just don't have anything else to say and write about. And then as many authors say, we don't find books, books find us. And the way this book found me was over and over again with my clients. I found that they were, and myself too. I mean, I'm not, I didn't escape this either, but it was these patterns that I was seeing over and over again and these behaviors. And I'm certified in the work of Dr. Brene Brown and I facilitate her work with my private clients. And what she calls it is the armor. So it's the behavior that we do where we think it's protecting us. So it's the perfectionism, the people pleasing, the hiding out and isolating, the numbing out. For some, it's self-sabotage, chronic control, overachieving, just to name a handful of them. And we get so used to these things, it becomes like our to-do list, to be honest with you. And Brene only talks about a handful of them, but they were a major theme in these women's lives. And I was like, that's what I need to write about. And I did some more research and found that there was about 14 of them that I saw over and over again with my audience. And I wrote about them and solutions too. It's not just a book about, here's all the things you're doing wrong.
Right.
Solutions too.
So you can continue feeling like shit and even more like shit.
Right.
But it's like
that happens.
Solutions. So you talk about shame. Obviously, Brene's work is deeply connected to shame. And I love her work too. I recently finished reading Braving the Wilderness. Good, because I didn't read her one before that, Rising Strong. The first one was like Daring Greatly. And then for whatever reason, I skipped out on Rising Strong. And then I came back in and I was like, whoa. And there's just so much in that. And I love that, you've trained under her and you've taken your own approach. Like you've just taken that and then applied it to your work and your audience. And so I'm curious what shame has to do with these 14 habits that you have uncovered and seen going on with your clients. Like, how is shame connected?
I've even seen some women who have read Brene's work that they still don't understand how shame is a factor in their life. And they say things like, I don't walk around feeling ashamed. I don't think it's me. And what I can tell you, and this is from Brene's research as well, that if you are participating in those behaviors regularly, shame is the driving force in those behaviors. So we use those habits and behaviors in an effort to avoid shame. So, I mean, if you think about just using the example of perfectionism, we are perfectionists because we are trying to engineer our life so that we avoid judgment and criticism and critics and naysayers and all of those things.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's like, it's a protective mechanism that we take on. What's that? We think it is.
I said we think it is. It works until it doesn't.
Right. It works until it doesn't. So there's so much happening now with women. Like, I feel like this like uprising going on. And I mean, it's been happening for some time, but it seems to be getting so much play. Like, we're recording this in the month of November. And I have just been fascinated by reading. I mean, literally last night I was staying up after my kids have gone to bed and I'm reading articles about women who are coming out accusing these men of sexual assault or inappropriate behavior. Like these institutions that have carried so much power, like Hollywood, government, and beyond, are kind of like the military crumbling, and women are standing up and being like, yeah, no more. Like, and so why do you feel like, with your work, how to stop feeling like shit, maybe how to stop taking shit is so important right now with what's going on at a macro and micro level?
I think that, I mean, yes, to everything you were saying, and I'm with you. I've spent I was posting on social media yesterday about how just over the last weekend, I was consuming all these articles. And it's not just the stories that I'm reading. I'm reading really well thought out articles from women
Yes.
talking about this like meta view problem, and saying things that are, they're able to articulate things so much better than I am, because I'm still at this point blinded by anger and
Mm-hmm.
processing all of this. And I think that that's the case for many women.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what this, one of the themes, and it's the very last chapter of the book, is on values
Mm-hmm.
and knowing what yours are. And not only that, but knowing what they look like in real life. And I swear, every single client I've ever worked with has a value either around courage or authenticity or integrity or all three of those. So when you have a value around that,
Mm-hmm.
part of it is speaking up for yourself and standing up for yourself. And I think that so many women have been doing that for decades and no one believes them. Or it is such a
Mm-hmm.
risk to do that. You are risking your reputation, your job, your financial stability, your relationships. So many women have stayed quiet out of like survival, really, is what it is. And so now more than ever, I think that it is important to know what your values are, because anytime you're participating in any of those behaviors that I talk about in the book, you're not in alignment with your values.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has a value around people pleasing. You might have a value around being of service and nurturing people, but bending over backwards and saying yes when you want to say no, no, that's not in alignment with who you are as a human being. Perfectionism, like all of it, like that at the end of the day, that doesn't make you feel good. And that's hence the title, How to Stop Feeling Like Shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, yes, it is this, once you dig into these behaviors and start reading, you'll see your own patterns and solutions on how to do that, so that you can, what I want the win for women to be reading this book is that they are proud of the woman that they see when they look in the mirror. That's what I want. I want everyone to feel proud of who they are. And for a lot of us, we don't know what that looks like, because we're so used to doing all this other bullshit of the perfecting and the pleasing and the performing and this whole dog and pony show in order to survive.
Yes.
I get fired up about this.
Totally. I do too, and I'm so grateful for you going through the process of writing a book. I've written one, and I know what a labor of love it is. You have a few under your belt now, and just the process of writing changes you. The actual work that you're focusing on changes you. It'll change the shape of your business, because things will just come through that weren't able to come through because it was blocked until you got this book birth. So I understand that you had a personal crisis in the middle of writing this book. Can you speak to kind of just your process as a writer, and then what happens when life happens when you're writing a book?
Yeah, I was about probably 60 or so % done with the first draft of the manuscript. And so my deadline to turn it into the publisher was December 31st, and my dad died in October. So it was like kind of right before the election too. And he got sick in September, so it was very quick, and he passed away, and I was flying back and forth. He was in San Diego, and I live in North Carolina. And yeah, I mean, wait, shit, my dad died. Like, and I needed to go home and finish this manuscript and write about self-help. There was just no way. And I asked for an extension and got 2 or 3 weeks. I think I got 3 weeks, which forced me to really figure out, I mean, strategy for one. It's like deadline. How am I going to actually do this? And I think the bigger thing of it was, here I am writing about all of the behaviors that we do to try to avoid feeling things. And here I am met with this crisis. Am I going to eat my words? Am I going to fall back onto these behaviors that I'm so used to doing? And the answer a lot of times was yes. And I like in the introduction, I write about this. This book isn't about learning how to avoid all of those things. Like what I want the win to be is, quickly when you're doing it. And that way you can hopefully have some self-compassion and then get out in front of it pretty quickly and clean anything up that you need to. So yeah, I mean, I did numb out a little bit. I did lash out at people that didn't deserve it and had to apologize. I did go to the mall and spend entirely too much money on a dress and shoes for his funeral, because I couldn't imagine not having the perfect funeral dress for my dad's funeral and things like that, I wasn't perfect, I think is what I'm trying to say. And it was a great lesson, because shit happens, and it happened. And it was a great lesson in real life.
Yeah. And then thank you for sharing that story. I'm sorry that you had to go through it. It's such a challenging time, but it makes your message that much more real. Like, this is what happens. We can't choose when our parents are going to go. We can't even choose when we're going to go. I mean, really,
Right.
it's all this ultimate mystery. And yet you showed up. You're like, all right, I'm going to get a little bit more time. I'm going to show up. I'm going to do this work. And you're going to be honest that you weren't perfect. But I think perfectionism, I mean, is one of the pieces that we latch onto. I was just having interviewing someone else prior to you, and that was something that she had to deal with. You know, she kind of got that message as a child, like, I'm going to do this perfect thing. And it just slays us, especially, you know, not only do we have this work that we do, but for you and a lot of my guests, we're entrepreneurs. And so trying to be perfect in our work is such a trap. I mean, it's like the worst thing that we can do, because we'll never finish anything. You'll never put it out there, because like there's probably a typo in it. There's probably this thing that, you know, wasn't said the most eloquent way possible. So talk about, let's just dive into, you know, some of the habits. You kind of, you know, you mentioned some of them, but I'd love to kind of chew on, you know, one or two to give our listeners a flavor for some of the shit that we do to ourselves and how we can break free. Like, what is that solution from this shitty move that we do, and what we can be doing differently now that we're in 2018.
One of the ones I love to talk about, because I feel like it doesn't get talked about as commonly in personal development, is the whole concept of being strong. So how many times what really sparked this for me was I was on social media, and a friend or something was experiencing some kind of crisis. It was, you know, like a parent dying or something happened. And I noticed that so many of the comments, people said, stay strong. And I was like, fuck that shit, you know, like, because the opposite is what? To fall apart, to actually like be human and feel your feelings and quite possibly like cry and grieve in front of other people. And it really got me thinking about it, and, you know, asking the women around me, is this something that comes up in your life? Have you struggled with this? And it sort of overlaps with perfectionism a little bit because of a few things. We as women stereotypically are, you know, if we show emotion, we are put in a box of being hysterical and, you know, too sensitive, too emotional. And, you know, we don't want those. We don't want those stereotypes. We try to avoid them. And also, we're praised for being strong. I know I was, when I went through a really bad time in my life. I got divorced 11 years ago, and it was a very egregious divorce. And so many people said things like, I don't know how I would get through something like that. You're so incredibly strong. And I'm like, really? Because I don't feel like it. And, you know, in retrospect, I wanted someone to say, do you need to fall apart? Because it seems like you might need to. And I'm here if you need to. You know, and we are so uncomfortable with other people's grief and heavier emotions. So we tell them to be strong. And that is something I want to turn on its head. And the solution to that is to redefine what being strong is, first and foremost. To me, being strong is asking for help, is to reaching out to the people that we trust the most and say, Jenny, do you have 15 minutes? I'm going through this thing and I can't see a way out. Can you just listen to me for a minute? And it's, you know, breaking down in front of someone that can just sit with you in your pain and grief. That is vulnerable for both parties. Because the other person who's witnessing it will most likely want to fix it because it's uncomfortable for them to witness the person they care about in pain. And it's also, being strong is prefacing conversations and saying, I don't need you to fix it. I just need you to put your phone down and listen to me for a minute.
Yes.
So it's I think for someone to take away from this is, first and foremost, do you struggle with that? Like, do you want to have this identity as the strong one? Because, and what do you deem as the opposite? What is the opposite? Is it weakness? Is it, falling apart, someone that doesn't have their shit together? Like, we make up stories about what not being strong is. So what is that for you? And then redefining what strength is. And these are hard lessons, Jenny. This isn't like, do this by Friday and you're good. You know, this is life's work.
Yes. Like forever work. And I love that. Those are the best ones because you can chew on this for a long time. But that example was really compelling for me. Where you're bringing me back to when I was in high school. I remember we had to pick a word my senior year English class, AP English, you know, and any word in the whole dictionary, the whole vocabulary. And I chose strengths. And it was really interesting examining that word. So when you talk about strong, and I remember kind of interpreting that. And at that point, my sister had died, you know, a few months prior.
That's what I was going to ask you.
That project. So I interviewed, you know, a few people to bring that word to life. But as you were sharing that story, I thought about that memory. And then I also thought about that time that I did reach out to somebody to do just what you said. It was my first corporate job in New York. I was like this, you know, high flying public relations executive, and connected to the sister's death. It was the month of February, which is always a funny month for me because that's the month of her death. And I just had hit a wall. It was like how you had to, you know, your dad dies, you got this deadline, you got a little more time, but you got to pull it out. Like you got to finish this thing. Well, when my sister died, no one kind of said that to me, but I interpreted it like that. Like I can't stop. I didn't even miss a day of school. Like she died on a Sunday. I was on Monday, my butt's in school. Okay. And I just put my grief. I was like, can I just table that? Like, can I just stick that over there and I'll just fit it in? Like when I have some time.
I've done that before.
How to do that. Nobody was like, here's how you grieve, Jenny. Nobody taught me that. And I was petrified. I'm like, but I'm captain of the cheerleaders and I've got this and I've and I don't have time. I don't have time to grieve. But grief catches up with you. That's what I learned. And so it was about 8 years later and I'm crumbling. I'm crumbling under the stress of my job. I'm crumbling under like New York City. I'm crumbling under, it's so expensive to live there, you know, and I'm partying. Like you and I both know we had our party days and I was drinking and drugs. And I was just like hit the freaking wall. And I remember reaching out. I had a girlfriend who we both worked at the same place. And her brother died when she was in college. And my sister died when I was in high school. And so we shared that connection. Not many people know what that feels like to have a sibling die so young. And AOL Instant Messenger, back in those days, I Instant Messenger and I said, Tracy, I need help. Can you please come to my office? I'm really having a hard time. And no one really saw me as that. I was the one who had my shit together. I was the
pillar of strength.
Yeah. And she came over and she just sat in the room while I cried. And it was I will never forget that moment. I talk about it in my book. I will never forget that she was able to hold it. She wasn't trying to fix it for me. She listened and asked me questions about my sister and what do I remember about her. And it was the biggest gift. And from there, it was like, I realized that I had permission to get some spaciousness around the anniversary of her death. And, you know, I asked for some time off from work, like a half day off of work, which felt very bold. And it was just that realization, like what you go through in your book of that we don't have to stay strong at the expense of our humanity. And can we just reach out and get help? And why is it that people have such a hard time with grief and with emotions? Like, why? What is that?
I know why. It's because and this is what Brené's research has shown, is that as in this culture, we deem that as weakness because it is uncertain. But it's so fascinating to me. And I spent most of my life with that belief. It's so fascinating to me because now I know, and trust me, there are still times where I'm trying to control my emotions and they scare me a little bit. But now I know that emotions are information. Emotions are our body's way of communicating with us. Like, and our bodies are this wisest part of ourselves. I mean, you've had babies before, like, you know what labor is. Like your body, it's like, there's no stopping it. Like it knows what it's doing. Same thing when you sneeze or sweat or burp. It's like your body is trying to get out the things that it doesn't need anymore and that aren't welcome there anymore. And it knows how to stay at homeostasis. So what if we just looked at emotions that way? I mean, I have a 10-year-old and 8-year-old, and this is not what I learned growing up, but I tell them all the time, you are allowed to feel whatever you feel, but you are responsible for how you act when you're feeling it. So I don't want my kids to be like, well, I'm just going to feel what I feel and be able to slam the doors and tell you to fuck off. No. You feel what you feel, but you are responsible for how you treat me. I always tell them, like, you can feel what you feel, but you're not allowed to be nasty to us. You need to clean up that mess. And so I didn't grow up in that family. Like, we had one feeling, it was happiness. And if you had any others, can you go and do that by yourself? My parents didn't have the vocabulary for it. And so it's not like I was told that it was bad. We just never ever talked about it. And, it's like their family friend died. And, I saw my dad cry for the first time, and it scared the crap out of me. No one talked to me about what was going on. My mom's brother died, and I saw her cry for the first time. She didn't leave her bedroom for 3 days. Wow. And my dad was just like, don't bother your mother. And I'm like, this is scary for a child, and nobody talked to. And my parents did the best they could. I forgive them for that. They were wonderful parents. I feel like we always have to say that when we're talking about our family.
It's like the caveat. Like, it's cool. I know I chose them. Okay, it's good. I got what I needed.
But it's what they knew. It was that generation. It was different than what we're used to. And so now I'm like obsessed with feelings. And don't get me wrong, Jenny, like, I don't enjoy feeling the more difficult ones, but I have the self-trust now that it will be okay, because before I did not trust that. I didn't trust my emotions.
Right. And let's talk about, because you and I both have, a history with alcohol, and we've chosen to let that go. Was your drinking a piece of, well, you didn't trust the emotions, you didn't really know what to do with them, and so the alcohol allowed you to just numb them?
Yeah. And for me, my addiction, I know that some people don't, I have a recovery series, so I interview a lot of people in recovery, and there are some people who have, high bottoms like us, and they don't identify with the word addict or alcoholic, which I think you don't have to identify as an addict or an alcoholic to live a sober life, by the way.
Yes.
But I personally do, because my addiction started when I was a teenager with codependence and love addiction. And I was a pretty normal drinker back then. And then when I found out, when I was like 30 or 31, I found out what that codependence and love addiction was, and that I was one, and started to heal from that in therapy and 12-step programs. And then it was right around that time that my drinking picked up. So I used those things to not have to cope with life. I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust other people. I kind of half joke, like, intimacy and connection were the things I wanted the most from other people, but it was like, at the same time, I was terrified of them. Terrified. So it was like this weird push-pull relationship with my romantic relationships and my close female friendships, and I shoved it all down. And like I was saying earlier, it works until it doesn't. It's a 12-step program saying, and it worked for a little while, and until I got to a point in my life where it was not working. My relationships would always fall apart. Couldn't figure out what was wrong with everybody.
Right.
It was actually me.
Right.
So that changed everything.
And you
and then all the feelings came up, which was also a whole nother podcast episode. So,
right. Then you have to deal with the feelings and realize we don't have to be afraid. And that's been, I let go of alcohol 2.5 years ago now. And I mean, it's just been a wild, awesome ride. It's just realizing that for me, it was realizing that my greatest work could come when I didn't need to numb, and I didn't need that crutch. I didn't need that thing that at one point made me feel like that's how I could be in that room with other people. Like, I'm actually more exciting when I'm more interesting and likable when I have some drinks in me, because I'm more free-spirited and people like me like that. And it's all about whether they like me and not whether I like me. Right. And then that recognition that, wow, there's a whole nother world out there. And I love what you said about, you don't have to identify as an addict. or an alcoholic to live a sober life. And so what would you say are just like a sober life? You know, what really is that, and what are the benefits of walking through that door?
I think a sober life, and it really depends on the person. And I know some people who felt like they had a really bad relationship with alcohol, but feel like they can smoke pot recreationally. You know, and or vice versa. They had a problem with cocaine or something, but they can have a glass of wine every once in a while. If you feel like you can do that, and you feel like you do not obsess on alcohol or drugs, then you be you and you go do that. And I'm mildly jealous of you, because I can't do that. I can't. It's not how my brain is wired, and I have accepted that and surrendered to that. So the benefits are, oh my God, where do I begin? I think first and foremost, and this was something, I hesitate to say this because I think it might scare some people, but when I got sober in 2011, one of the things that surprised me was that my divorce that I spoke of, that kind of exploded in my face. And at that point, it had been like 6 years, and I was remarried and had 2 beautiful children, and I had a good marriage. And I was like, what the fuck is this? Yeah. It was grief. It was grief from that. And it was grief that I lost this other family that I was, you know, he and I had been together for almost 14 years since I was 17. And I loved his parents, you know, and his siblings. And I had this whole other family. I had this whole other life, and I had grieved him. And I was deeply grieving the loss of like my former in-laws. And that was completely unexpected. And family of origin stuff too, that I just didn't, you know, and stuff that had happened to me when I was a teenager, these really hard things. Having an abortion, being date raped, like things that I had pushed away because they were too hard, or I felt like they were my fault, or it was just too much to deal with. I didn't know how to do it. And for me, my addiction started when I was 16, 17. So they, quotes, say that when we get sober, when we start our addiction, we become emotionally stunted. So when we get sober, we go back to the age that we were at emotionally. So I felt like I was a teenager. And luckily I live in this work. And so I was like, you know, pedal to the metal with learning how to deal with my emotions. And thankfully I had so many resources at my disposal. And there was moments where I was like crying about something, and I'm like, I don't think I can do this sober. Like a bottle of wine would just make this all go away. And it was those moments where I had to call on my people and really lean into recovery, because that's me being afraid. That's me being not trusting myself and not trusting the universe and not trusting anything, and really playing small. So in a nutshell, the benefits are feeling your feelings and self-growth, massive self-growth, and learning how to trust yourself, and learning what real intimacy is and connection. It's not a drunken, you know, like heart to heart, I love you crying. It's not.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Totally. I know. I mean, and that's for many of us, like we start drinking when we're teenagers. And so that's what it is. That's what we interpret it to be. And then there's just this recognition. There's just a whole nother realm available. And, you know, I talk about this with, you know, my guests who also have let go of alcohol, and those like you, I'm like, and if you can have a good relationship with them, like go have a margarita for me. Like that's awesome. But I just can't go there. I've already played that game. I know where it takes me. I'm good. You know, I'm good. And so, you know, as we are now in 2018, as this is going out into our airwaves, my hope for our listeners and our audience is to really make a conscious decision about how you want to feel, what you want to do, that you don't just kind of go through this methodical motion. You're like, well, that's what everyone in my world does, so I'm just going to do it like they do. Like really trust those signals that you're getting, feel your feelings, as you said, and realize that a lot of these things that are kind of what just happens in the world do make you feel like shit. And so for me, like part of my letting go of alcohol was like, it fucking made me feel like shit.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
During the time, it was awesome. And then for days I'm feeling like shit because my body can't do hangovers anymore. Like it just can't. And so, you know, I was living the message of your book when I made that decision, where the decision just got made. It was just like, because I don't want to feel like shit. I want to feel good, because when I feel good, that's when I can do my best work. So Andrea, what, you know, for those who are like, oh my gosh, I'm ready to, you know, get this book. What is your hope from everybody who gets their hands on it? what do you hope for them to walk away with and to, have as they start this glorious new year?
I think a couple of things. I want them, and I mentioned this before, but I think it's important to say again, is that it's not about eliminating these behaviors altogether. What I want women to do is know when they're doing it, know when they're participating in self-sabotage, people-pleasing, numbing out, so that they can choose other behaviors. And that's what the book has. It has a ton of tools in there. Again, the last chapter is all about values, and values is one of those things that's like, that's kind of unsexy, but it is foundational. Negative self-talk, which is the first chapter, and values is the last one. I bookended those because they are so important. And I want women to be able to know when they're in it, so they can know quickly and they can get out in front of it and use better tools that make them proud of the women that they are, so they can stop feeling like shit.
Love. Oh my gosh. And
put that on a t-shirt.
Oh yeah. Boom, boom, boom. All right. Well, we've had you on the show before. I asked this question of all my guests, the finale question I've got to ask you. And maybe it's just since the time you were on before. First off, I'm not even asked the question. I got to ask, how can they find your book? How can they get your book? How can they get your hands on the book? Then we'll get the questions.
A couple of different ways. I'm going to actually send people to yourkickasslife.com/HTSFLS. So it's the acronym for the book, How to Stop Feeling Like Shit, HTSFLS. And I'm offering a free 4-week book study guided by me if you order the book between now and the 22nd. So hopefully someone's listening to this before that, so they can get in the private Facebook group, PDF worksheets that are beautiful, and lots of other ways to win some fun prizes and stuff like that. So that is happening. And you didn't tell me your next question.
Okay.
Like, forget? No, you didn't ask me.
No, you're good. yourkickasslife.com/HTSFLS, how to stop feeling like
Correct.
shit, right? Okay, y'all go there. That's where all the magic's happening. Get your hands on the book. Everybody should be reading. Like, that's like one of my big messages. I'm like, you guys, you have to be reading. Like, I am always reading a book. Do you always have a book going, Andrea, except when
I always have multiple. I listen to, I do audiobooks for self-help, but like nonfiction or fiction, I always read.
Okay. Yeah. I always have a book going. So everyone who listens to Get Gutsy, you have to have a book going. So now it's going to be How to Stop Feeling Like Shit. Okay, Andrea, finale question. What is the gutsiest move you've made since we last had you on this show? And how
since I last
inspiring, and you can remember it's in the last 2 years. How does it inspire your life and work today?
I can answer that in the last 2 years. I don't remember what I said last time, but it's definitely not this.
I'm sure.
I can think of probably a couple things I said, but in the last couple of years, the gutsiest thing I've ever done is work on my upper limit stuff. Scary. When you have a book that comes out, for any aspiring authors or even people that have written a book, the first time it came out, I didn't know what to expect. So it sort of like, catapults you into the spotlight. And I was terrified. I hid out for about 4 months in my business. And luckily this time I knew it was coming. So I've pushed myself and stepped out of my comfort zone. And I'm just done with that kind of stuff. So I can recognize it now. I can recognize, and you and I, we're friends in real life. So we've talked about this kind of stuff, and I keep seeing it, and I am trying to be kind to myself about it and not beat myself up for having it, because I think we all experience that. I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate to upper limit stuff.
Absolutely. And it's so great when you've done something more than once, because you're like, so that's the cool thing about having, you've written a few books now. So it's like, it's like the first baby, and then I had more, and I'm like, oh, I can do it. I can know from the last experience how I want to shift it for this time. It's like when I launch a program more than one time, I'm like, now I know what to expect, what I'm going to bring. I'm not going to bring all that stupid shit, like all those fears that I brought in before because I was afraid of what might happen or what's not going to happen. I'm just going to go and I'm going to have a good time. And I'm just, you leave it all out on the dance floor.
Yeah, exactly. But don't forget your phone. But you can see like obstacles that might come up, and that's what I've been really knowing what's coming. And I'm like, no, you're not going to take me down this time.
Yeah, I ain't playing. Well, Andrea, thank you so much for being here. Congratulations on your new book, baby. Everybody go out and grab it. How to Stop Feeling Like Shit. Come on, it's 2018. We don't have time for this shit, right? Everybody,
We don't.
thanks so much for tuning in. This is Jenny Fennig sending you so much love, light, and faith as you get gutsy. I will see you next time.
Hey, this is John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and you're listening to Get Gutsy with Jenny Fennig. Gutsy leaders unite and ignite.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Get Gutsy as much as I enjoyed creating it for you. Are you responsible for leading and growing your spiritual business? If so, I have a free tool for you that will help you spread your message like wildfire. It's called the Sacred Marketing Puzzle, and it's a one-page PDF guide that simplifies the often mysterious and confusing world of marketing. When you use sacred marketing tools to amplify your message, you'll provide huge value to your tribe and grow your business. What are you waiting for? Go to jennyfennig.com/puzzle to get yours instantly. That's jennyfennig.com/puzzle. Gutsy leaders, unite.